Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of our podcast, Off the Record. Today it's all about collaboration. Eray, before we welcome our guest today, I would like to ask you a question. Please complete the following sentence. For me, good collaboration means...
When it's fun.
And that's it.
That's it.
Our guest today is someone with whom we also enjoy working. Welcome, Gerd Scheller, Country CEO, Siemens Switzerland and CEO of Siemens Mobility Switzerland. Nice to have you here.
Hello Dashi, hello Eray, I'm delighted to be here.
Gerd, how would you answer the question I just asked Eray? No, the other way around. Please complete the sentence. For me, good collaboration means...
Having fun doing what you do, but also achieving results together.
And what does bad collaboration look like to you?
Not having fun. There are many things that make bad collaboration to be serious. I think most of the time, a lot of energy is wasted on things that don't lead us to our goals, but instead, you fight for your own objectives. You fight each other. You think about it a lot. How do I feel? Why do I feel so lousy? I don't pay much attention to the negative aspects, which may be the cause of my unease, that I want to work on to achieve a goal, but really I'm focusing on things that aren't so relevant in that. Because coming back to good collaboration, I believe that if you achieve goals together, if you pull together on the same rope, then you automatically feel good about yourself. That, as you said, Yara, you have fun, that you have satisfaction, that you get strength, inner strength, and I think that makes all the difference. How you feel, I think that is ultimately very, very decisive in working together.
A shared understanding of and about culture is also important for good cooperation. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
How do you rate that at Siemens?
I think in principle, and now let's start from different areas. I think, for example, our top management team, our managing board works well together. Whenever I witness their joint performances on stage at the SBC, their message delivery is always in tandem seamlessly. They work very well together. So I really have the feeling that there is a team and that they work together for the benefit of Siemens, but there are also other issues where I have to say that there is room for improvement. The cooperation between a headquarters, and I'm not talking about the headquarters, the SAI headquarters, but about the headquarters in Germany, and the regions is often criticized. And this has been the case for years. So of course you wonder why this is the case. I think a lot depends on how people understand each other. What are the sensitivities? Fighting on the front line in the market, perhaps different issues, fighting with customers, fighting with competitors, is perhaps a different issue than governance from the head office. And I believe that this often leads to a different understanding of the issues. Not a mutual understanding, but individually different ones. And then there are problems. If I look at the Team Siemens Switzerland team now, I think we found each other there too. When I think back a few years ago, there were actually two companies, the SI headquarters and the regional company. Today, I think we are pulling in the same direction. Instead of being at opposite ends and going separate ways, they are both heading in the same direction. I think we always have topics that we discuss together, but we are working on getting a common understanding of these issues. And I believe that with these topics, we have a very good working relationship, and I don't want to limit this to the regional company and SI headquarters, but also Siemens Mobility regional company, and in many respects also with Siemens Energy and Siemens Healthineers. So I think we have very good cooperation in the Team Siemens Switzerland. And good cooperation, excuse me if I say this briefly, doesn't mean that you always agree with each other, but it is important to have friction there, to move forward with friction. Without friction, there is no movement. The question is how much energy is lost when the friction is so great that it starts to burn. It is no longer good.
According to a recent overview, the primary challenge in collaboration is poor leadership, which ranked first among the 10 biggest challenges. Can managers be held responsible for our ineffective teamwork?
I wouldn't solely hold them responsible for the eventuation. I wouldn't say that you are to blame either, but I do believe that you can set the conditions for people to work well together. You are fulfilling your obligation to set the right spatial conditions. And spatial conditions are like freedom of self-organization for teams. If I put too many constraints on a team that has the potential to organize itself well and produce results, perhaps not as much will come out of it as you think. So I believe that self-organization and empowerment are essential. Or when conflicts arise, which as a manager you then tackle and try to resolve, I think that's essential. That's a management task, to create a culture in which people respect each other, respect the differences, and then use these different aspects and skills together for the good of the company, the task of the manager. Therefore, I believe the manager bears some responsibilities in handling tasks, but if the cooperation is flawed, it would be unjust to solely attribute blame to the manager alone. Rather, it requires collective effort from every team member. This is what it demands. Everyone has a responsibility.
Also on this list is the lack of agreement on the goals of the collaboration.
You can absolutely agree with that. It's like the image of pulling together, but then it also has to be in the same direction at the same end, because otherwise it's useless. And for me, that's also the image of common goals. It doesn't mean that you always have to be very clear about your goals from the outset, but it does mean that if you have a target area that you want to reach, that you have defined it, and that you then work together to make it more and more detailed and specific over the course of the collaboration, and that you have an agreement there, where you want to go and that you are alone there.
You are also part of the diversity, equity, and inclusion community. Why is working with and in a diverse workforce an enrichment?
I have attempted to mention it previously. I believe each of us has explored this concept, although I hesitate to refer to it as superpowers, since it was also discussed at a Women's Network event recently. In my view, we all possess unique abilities that set us apart. And I believe that the diversity of the different skills, the different aspects that you bring to the table, is the strength, because then you have different perspectives on the topics. And if you then reach an agreement, an alignment, in understanding, in mutual understanding, you simply have a much better solution. It's like a one-dimensional picture, a line, or a two-dimensional picture, or a three-dimensional picture. I have a lot more information in there, and from that I can then create much, much better solutions that are better for Siemens, our company, the team, but also each individual. So I think that's extremely important. And I don't want to emphasize any of these superpowers as the superpower, but it's important that these are really the individual, different topics. Everyone can say that they have a superpower. And what are your superpowers? I can fly the stairs and then I don't think that I have any superpowers. I'm just good. I think I'm very goal-oriented. I think I'm very structured. I hope I can meet various people's needs satisfactorily while responding. I think that's also an issue that you should have as a manager, to see the needs. But I also have the goals. Perhaps also the strategic foresight of Siemens' goals in my head, and then achieving them together is my point. And that should be my contribution in the organization. I am also very ambitious.
Is there anything specific you want to work on?
My cellar in Obersachsen. What would I like to work on? First of all, quite seriously, of course, there are always things to work on. And I think there's one thing I need to work on in general. Most likely all of us, except for me in particular, I must ensure that I do not alienate or lose individuals in my life. You mentioned diversity, equity, and inclusion earlier. I'm already aware that everyone is different and everyone has different skills. That I respect that the skills don't match my powers. People of different backgrounds. Perhaps I'm more prone to creativity, but not so constrained that I fail to acknowledge the importance of structure and the possibility of varying speeds. And that doesn't mean that you can't achieve your goals faster or slower at a different speed. You can achieve them just as quickly, that you respect that accordingly and then give it space, for what you mentioned earlier, Dashi, to achieve the best with diversity. I think we really need to step out of our shoes from time to time. Look at the perspective of others. That is certainly one issue. And a second issue I could work on would be not getting so annoyed over the weekend sometimes. When cooperation with certain other organizations, headquarters, doesn't work so well, that often leads to a bad night's sleep, and you come into the office on Monday already irritated. That doesn't help.
What is the most difficult thing you have experienced so far?
Reflecting on my entire career outside of Siemens, I can say that one of the most challenging experiences I've had stands out. At no point did I expect it to be easy. It was an integration, a merger with a company where the difficulty of the merger was not recognized at all by the management. I once stood up to the press and said that the merger was easy. Everyone was working in a different area. I managed a team of 200 developers who did exactly the same thing as the 150 or 200 developers on the other side. And that was very, very difficult because they didn't respect the problem that was there. And without the problem being respected, we had to find solutions at a working level. I had to find solutions with my counterpart. And of course, we argued and all sorts of things, but then we also worked well together and found solutions, but it wasn't respected because you were working on a tough issue that management didn't even see. And this ignorance of the problems by management and the sensitivities of the employees was really exhausting.
In the last episode, we talked to our boss about the topic of empowerment. What impact does he think empowerment has on collaboration?
I've tried to say it before, I believe that self-organization of teams leads to teams organizing themselves in the best possible way because they respond to their own needs. And if that not happen through empowerment, then framework conditions are often put in place that have no added value. So if there is no empowerment within certain limits, this can be a major obstacle to teamwork. And again, I don't claim to see all the issues. So to always say top down, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way, and so on. No, that completely limits the entire competence of the team. And that's why I believe you should never claim to say everything from the top, but you have to build on empowerment, on the strength of each individual and the strength of teams.
In your role as CEO, you very often have to make decisions. There are bound to be 1 or 2 decisions that not everyone really likes. Do you have an example?
All the decisions I've made so far have been great, haven't they? No, there are always decisions that you have to make that aren't great, whether it's closing down businesses or having to part with individuals. I mean, it's not just my job as CEO, it's a management task. But I think you also have to make decisions like that for the good of the whole. I'm thinking of the relocation of mechanical production, for example. Of course, it would be nice to have all the employees at work, even if it doesn't serve the greater good. If there exist more effective methods of accomplishing tasks, we might put at risk the potential outcome, the basis of the work and the livelihood of a larger part of it. And sometimes you have to make unpopular decisions. And it's the same when you part ways with an employee. It's just as difficult. Of course, there is an individual human side, but there's also the team side, isn't there? Why you separate like that? I think especially when there are perhaps also background reasons, as such as an employee's limited ability to work for several years, then it's very difficult to make such decisions. And then you really have to think carefully about it and consider all the options, have considered them. However, ultimately, you must still be the one to make these important decisions, as we cannot fulfill the role of the government's social insurance program. In order to create value for our shareholders, our priority is to provide stable employment for our valued employees. And you have to make unpopular decisions from time to time.
Are mistakes part of it?
I think we all make mistakes. I don't hope that you make mistakes when making difficult, carefully considered decisions, but that they are the right ones, because they often affect people and you have to think very, very carefully before making decisions. But mistakes are part of us as human beings, like eating and drinking.
In a podcast episode, we asked Jörn about the topic of error culture. Who makes more mistakes, him or you?
And what did he say?
We will not disclose his response, but we stated that we would pose the same inquiry to you as well. Thus, Gerd, with all sincerity, please enlighten us. Who, between you and Jörn, commits more errors?
No, I think that's totally irrelevant, because the collaboration between Jörn and me is extremely good. It's based on trust, on mutual trust, on mutual respect. I think I know what Jörn brings to the team in terms of positive aspects, and I think Jörn also appreciates what I can bring to the team. It's not congruent, but we complement each other. We advise each other. We also approach each other with topics and problems that we discuss. And a mistake is nothing negative. A mistake can also have a positive side if you learn from it. And I believe that we use our mutual room for improvement to learn from each other. And I think that's what makes working with Jörn so good. And that's why we're happy about every mistake that one of us makes. Then we can both get better.
Speaking of mistakes, for me it's a mistake that so many companies are cutting their home office options. We introduced the group standard worldwide 4 years ago and are sticking to it. Will it stay that way?
I believe that working from home has many advantages, but working from home also harbors certain risks. And I think it's the same as before with employees, where you have to separate them. I think you have to make sure that you limit the excesses that could be caused by working from home to be limited. I believe we need to discover solutions, and I believe we have achieved that with the new normal. This allows us to collaborate effectively, even when working remotely, when we understand the value of a spacious home office, or there are perhaps also areas where less working from home can have a negative impact on collaboration. We put a stop to it, because once again, it's not important that we feel comfortable at home or feel comfortable in general. That's important, but it's not the most important thing. In the end, the most important thing is the result. Oh, that is our obligation, to bring added value to the shareholders. And of course, you can do that if you are satisfied. And that's where working from home plays a role. I mean, I rarely work from home, but I do from time to time. And I enjoy having lunch there with the family, or doing something with the family in the evening and then sitting there again later and doing the rest of the work. So I think it has its advantages. I think we want to take it further. That's a cultural aspect, but we have to put a stop to it when it gets out of hand. So if you suddenly say you can no longer come to the company because then it becomes difficult.
You just mentioned it. You're married and have 2 children. A family is also a kind of team in which everyone has to work together. Are there parallels?
Yes, of course, you have to understand each other. Although the management style at home is, of course, completely different.
And so is the decision-making power.
Exactly, no, I make all the important decisions. Actually, my wife makes all the decisions. I only reserve the important ones for myself. But so far, I haven't had to make any important decisions. My children make the remaining decisions. They happen very fast indeed. So many choices to make, so little time. And despite all your commitment to your work, you shouldn't forget that you also have a family and see how the children are growing up, because I think that's extremely the most important thing there is. We do everything for our future. It's in the children. You can't make up for anything. Once it's wasted, it's wasted.
Nice words, yes. At least you got to decide what drink to bring today. We're looking forward to seeing what you bring us.
A non-alcoholic lager from Migros. Very nice.
Yes, that's right. It could still be a bit cooler. Gerd, do you have a fridge in your office?
Where I work, there's friction. And it gets warm there.
And we have oat milk now.
And oat milk, exactly.
Nowadays, collaboration is also often referred to as cooperation, co-creation, teamwork, or co-working. Is that the same thing for you?
I firmly believe that numerous buzzwords often arise from the same underlying concepts. In reality, I believe in the importance of collaboration, co-creation, and similar concepts. That's why I really try to emphasize the topic of collaboration, because it's about us, not about modern ways of working, but it's always the same thing, that we as people, and this has been around for a while, simply work well together, that we respect each other as people. This use of these modern ways of working. There are numerous ways in which I prefer to work. This often necessitates an appropriate working environment or the use of specific tools. Nonetheless, the crux of the matter lies in our individual human qualities. And that's why it's important and nice that these topics exist, but it's not exactly the same as collaboration for me.
Dear Gerd, it's time for someone to play spoilsport again. Eray, it's your turn.
Me again? Okay. Unfortunately, we've already reached the end. We'd love to go on discussing this for hours. Thank you for your honest answers. I'm glad you could join us. And what's next?
In the next episode, we have a small anniversary. More about that, as I said, in the next episode. We'll be talking about the topic of adaptability. We look forward to you listening in again. Thank you very much and see you then.
I'll see you then.